Well, thank you again, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. The title of the talk that came to me yesterday when I was kind of sitting and listening for it was, life's a celebration, or at least it can be a celebration. But you have to get yourself to the party. It's not going to come to you and land in your lap. There's a role that you need to play. There's a task that you need to perform. The task is probably not the best word for it, but there's an activity or activities in which you must engage. And most importantly, there's an attitude, there's a mindset that we must have. We must have. Now, I wanted to start this morning. I want to read something to you that Ernest Holmes wrote, and it is actually, I guess you would call it the flyleaf of the Science Mind textbook. It's just inside the front cover. And it's a little poem that he wrote, and he used it to open this book, to open the ideas, to open us to the ideas, to help us open. And the title is, Peace Be Unto Thee, Stranger. Peace be unto thee, stranger. Enter, and be not afraid. I have left the gate open, and thou art welcome to my home. There is room in my house for all. I have swept the hearth and lighted the fire. The room is warm and cheerful, and you will find comfort and rest within. The table is laid, and the fruits of life are spread before thee. The wine is here also. It sparkles in the light. I have set a chair for you where the sunbeams dance through the shade. Sit and rest and refresh your soul. Eat of the fruit and drink of the wine. All is yours, and you are welcome. And that's Peace Be Unto Thee, Stranger, a poem by Ernest Holmes. So the simple idea, to kind of get us started with just a simple idea, and then we're going to kind of surrender ourselves to our feelings. But the simple idea is this: the gifts have already been given. We're told this. The gifts have been given. It is the Father's good pleasure to give us the gifts, the keys to the kingdom. And we're told that whatever we need, divine love already knows. It's already taken care of. And we should just ask believing in our hearts. And it shall be done. Remember, shall is like a command. It's like, it shall be done. It will happen. So what that tells me, or what I invite us each to consider, because each is going to have their own experience of what this means, is that the gifts have been given, but they can't be forced upon us. They cannot be thrust upon us. We must accept. There's something that we must do. Now, this is a very important point to keep in mind, because sometimes when we go into our practice of treatment, or into this idea of, what do you want to have happen today? See, I think this is a most important question we can each use to start our day. What do you want to have happen today? Now, we may have, pragmatic things that we want to have happen. We want to get the car washed or tires changed or those sorts of things. I'm talking about from the point of view of your spiritual experience, opening that spiritual center within us. What do you want to have happen today? And I think in many cases, in many days, we don't stop to ask that question. We're too busy. The alarm clock goes off. We hit the deck running. We got to turn the coffee pot on. The radio or the TV goes on. We become inundated with the drama of the world. And we lose sight of the fact that this day is a gift. This day is a celebration of life itself. Divine love has come here as each and every one of us to celebrate its own creation through us and as us, and to experience it in a unique way through us and as us. But it can only do so to the degree that we cooperate, that we consciously cooperate, that we choose to provide this opening. Otherwise, we're just living our lives at the human level, at the physical level. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Divine love has created that level. But there's more. You see, there's more to life. Peggy Lee had a hit song. I can't remember what it was. I guess it was in the 60s. And it was the lyrics started, "Is that all there is? Is that all there is, my friend? Then let's keep dancing." Right? Is that all there is to life? Is getting up, going to work, cooking, cleaning, eating, watching a little TV, and going to bed. And the next day, rinse, rinse and repeat. You see, there's more. There's more. That's not all that there is. Much of our experience, not our personal experience, but our collective human experience, much of the ideas or most of the ideas that come to us through the culture that we have here in this country, perhaps I'd say the modern world now. And by culture, I mean shared values. Right? Shared values. A culture is defined by its shared values, in my understanding. But very often, people don't know what those values are. They're not consciously expressed. They're not consciously understood. There's something there that they feel. There's something there that a sense of the way that this ought to be. But if you try to drill down and ask people, well, what are your values? You'll get answers, of course, But the answers that you get may not be what the true values are. See, the values are almost intangible. I think it was Plotinus who said that we get our values with our mother's milk. We absorb them so naturally from our family, from our friends, from our environment, that we never stop to call attention to them ourselves. We never stop to ask ourselves, what do I believe? See, what is truly important to me? And in this culture that we have grown up in, there's this idea that life is a struggle. It is meant to be a struggle. Stuart Wilde, the actor, wrote a little booklet. We used to have it in a bookstore. It was just a little tiny pamphlet, kind of thing. Maybe 10 or 15 pages, and it was only, a couple of inches. I don't even think it was 4 by 4. It might have been 2 inches by 3 inches. It was one of these little things that you could put in your pocketbook or carry in your briefcase and read. And the title of the book was "Life Was Never Meant to Be a Struggle." And I'll never forget the cover picture, because the cover picture kind of said it all. It was a picture of him laying back in a hammock on this beautiful sunny day with his little little white hat on, like shade hat, and a cold drink in his hand, iced tea or lemonade or whatever you choose. Just sitting there. Life was never meant to be a struggle. And I think the reason that it catches attention, or it caught attention and it sold, is there's something within us, I think, that knows that. See, there's something within us that believes that or wants to believe that. And yet so much of what we are told in our society is completely to the opposite. The early bird catches the worm. He who works the hardest gets the richest. You must eat your bread by the sweat of your brow. You must bear your children in pain. And all of these things, And we must keep in mind that the rules and the way that our society works is a function of the way human beings have created it. So you can point to our society and you can say, well, you see, if you have to struggle to make a living. You have to work hard, and you have to get a good job, you have to this, you have to that. Well, that's the way it was set up. That's the way it was set up. It's like watching a baseball game and saying, well, you have to get down to first base before the ball gets back there or you're out. Well, yes, that's true. But that's only because that's the way the rules were made. And the rules could be different. See, the rules could be different. So because our society, because we as human beings, because we have this fundamental underlying belief that life is supposed to be difficult, we have in many cases created difficulties where difficulties need not be. Need not be. We kind of reward, we reward difficulties. We reward competitiveness. We reward the athletes who can do the most difficult things the best. And when the difficult things get too easy because our athletes get better and better, we change the rules. So if you watch basketball games now, there's a three-point shot. Didn't always have a three-point shot. Didn't need a three-point shot. When basketball was invented, the average player was 5 feet 2 inches tall, and the height of the basket made it difficult enough to play the game. But as athletes grew taller, as they were able to jump better, it became too easy. I'll never forget when I was 16 or 17 years old, I got to go to, they had a Christmas basketball tournament at St. John's University in New York every year. And the high school students in New York, we could get in, I think it was like $1, we'd pay $1 and you could get in there for the whole week and watch all these games. And our school team was playing, and I went out there that day. And Power Memorial was playing, not our school, but they were playing a game before, and I got to watch them play. And 17-year-old Lou Alcindor, as we know him today as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he was playing his high school ball, and he was just amazing. His abilities were amazing. In the warm-ups, he would come out and he would jump up and he would stuff the ball behind his head. Go through the hoop, and the crowd would go wild. They would go wild. See, we in our society, we admire those who can do the difficult things. And we lose sight of the fact that we are the ones who made them difficult in the first place. And they didn't have to be that way. So that's why I think the title of the book, Life Was Never Meant to Be a Struggle, catches people's attention. If you look at the origin of world religions and world philosophies, you tend to find that people's point of view, their worldview, is shaped by the environment in which they grew up. So the people who grew up in a difficult environment, the people who lived in the desert, their view of life was that life is a struggle, because indeed trying to make things grow in the desert, trying to survive the heat, trying to get enough water, those things could be difficult, And they created gods. They created gods who made the struggle for them. Think about this, right? So little children, well, Daddy, if life is so good, if God is so good, why do we have to work so hard to eat? Why do we have to struggle? You see, God is punishing us. God is punishing us because we did not listen. We did not obey. If you move to a different part of the world, if you move to the South Sea Islands in the Pacific, if you move to the tropical jungles in the East, you find a different view of life. You find a different view. You imagine what it would be like to grow up in an environment where if you were hungry and you needed something to eat, you just walked out and picked fruit off the tree. Or you walked down to the lagoon and you caught a fish, because the abundance of life was so prevalent. See, the people who grew up in that environment, to them, life was more of a celebration. Life was more of a celebration. So all I'm getting to there is, our culture has told us that life needs to be a struggle. There's a part of us that says, no, the gifts have been given. It is the Father's good pleasure to give the gifts. Life is a celebration. And to say it is fine, but to live it, that is really what we want to do. And it's not enough just to know it intellectually. It's not enough just to say it. It's not enough just to feel good about it. Dr. Holmes said, we want more than a salutary effect. We want more than feeling good. We want more than holding hands and swaying and singing songs. Not that there's anything wrong with all of those things. But there's more, see. There's more. That's not all that there is. We want to actively participate in and experience the celebration of life. We want to experience life as a celebration. We want to experience our life as a celebration. We want to experience all life as a celebration, as a celebration of the goodness, as a celebration of the love, as a celebration of the joy that has created us out of itself. Now, in order to do that, if that truly is what we desire, then in order to do that, we must do what is required of us to participate. So imagine that somebody in your circle of friends is throwing a party. And they send you an invitation to the party. Say, hey, we're having this big party on Saturday night, and everybody will be here, and there'll be food, and there will be music, and there'll be laughter, and there'll be joy, and there'll be beverages. There'll be dancing. There'll be a wonderful celebration. And you look at the invitation, and you say, okay, but you never RSVP. You never say, hey, count me in. Give me a 1+. Or +1. See, I'm coming, I'm bringing a friend. And then maybe, Saturday comes around and it's the night of the party. And your friend reaches back out to you, they call you on the phone and they say, listen, I know I sent you the invitation. I haven't seen you RSVP, but it's not too late. We've got plenty of food. We've got plenty of room. Why don't you just get yourself in the car and come on over here? And you say, okay, that's good. There's a great party going on over there. There's a celebration going on over there. I feel good knowing that they're having fun over there. But you don't get dressed, you see. You don't put on your dancing shoes. You never took your party clothes to the cleaner. I guess that would be your disco suit from the 70s. You never called Uber or Lyft to come and bring you a car to take you over there. And because you didn't do what you needed to do. You didn't hold up your end of the bargain, if you want to think of it that way. You didn't get to join in that celebration. You got to know about it. You got to hear about it. On Monday, you get to hear all your friends tell you how wonderful it was. But you weren't part of it. You weren't part of it. So it's not a perfect example, but I think it serves the purpose to get us to think. First of all, is life really a celebration? Should life really be a celebration? Or did God make us to struggle by the sweat of our brow because of original sin, or the fall, if you want to call it the fall? Different cultures call it different things. And I think intellectually, from a point of view of logic and reasoning, we would have to stop and say, wait a second. Divine love created us out of itself. If it wants us to struggle, it wants itself to struggle. And it couldn't do that to itself because it is life affirming. So it does not want us to struggle. It did not make us to struggle. And we can release and let go of those old ideas. And we can say, well then, if divine love, if the divine is not imposing struggle upon us, then why is there struggle, right? The problem of evil, as theologians would call it. If God is so good, why do people struggle? And I invite you to consider today, it is that because we have not accepted the invitation, we have not fully stepped into the acceptance of what divine love is. We collectively, we as a human race. Individuals have, some individuals have, but we collectively have not stepped into it. So I think we can say, all right, life was never meant to be a struggle. Divine love created us as its point of celebrating the goodness and the magnificence of what it is. And I really do want to participate in that more fully, more completely. How do I do that? See, how do I do that? And what happens when I do that? See, what happens when I do that? And like anything else, it has to start with desire. You have to want to do that. You have to want it. We're so used to doing things in our ordinary human way that we don't necessarily stop to say, what do I want to have happen today? Something comes to our attention, and our first reaction, response is to think about, well, how am I going to handle that? How am I going to deal with that? It's like we go back to, when's the last time I saw something like this, and what did I do then, and have I learned anything since then? And the intellect goes to work, and it does its analysis, and we lay it all out, and we organize it, and we figure out who we need to call, who we need to get involved, and we're dealing with it from a completely human experience perspective. And what we want to do is stop. See, what we want to do is stop and say, no, no, no. What I want to have happen today is I want to handle the things that ought to be done through me and as me today in a different way. In a different way. Emma Curtis Hopkins gives us an affirmation to use. The divine wills and does and performs. The divine wills and performs that which ought to be done as me today. And this is getting our bloated nothingness, as Emerson would call it, getting our ego out of the way, getting our ego and our intellect out of the way, and trying to do everything I, and opening ourselves up to say, what would love have me do today? How would perfect intelligence deal with this today? What is the way to resolve this that is in the highest good of all concerned today? See? So we start with our desire. And I guess intention kind of goes right along with that. We have to have the intention. We have to. If you don't have the intention, if you don't have the desire, you won't have the intention. Perhaps vice versa. But what is it that we intend in our life today? I can't remember who used the example of Isaac Newton. Some book I was reading, and in the book, excuse me, somebody said to Newton, said, "How did you get to be such a great thinker when your mind is not really that much better than any of the other students?" Sound like the kind of thing your professor or your grandparent would say to you. You were never so bright. How'd you get to be so famous? And Newton's response was, I intended my mind. I intended my mind. He made up his mind. He had an intention. So do we have the desire? Do we have the intention to go about every moment? That's why I love the quote that Wendy read this morning. Right? In the moment. The celebration of gratitude in the moment, the experience of gratitude in the moment, now, not yesterday, not tonight when I get home from work, but now, in the moment. That's what opens up the spiritual center, opens up our spiritual growth. So we have the desire, we have the intention, we choose this day to participate more fully in the party of life that is going on all around us. And that requires our conscious awareness. Right? That requires that we don't go on autopilot and do things the old way that we ought to do, but we look and we expect the guidance that reveals to us a new way, a better way, a happier way, a more joyful way, a celebratory way. So we have the desire, we have the intention, and then we have to have the discipline. Right? The discipline. We have to get ourselves into a habit of doing it. And most self-help books will tell us it takes 21 days to create a new habit. I don't know if that's true or not, but try it. Try it for yourself. If it turns out to be 19, well, that's fine. Turns out to be 30, that's fine too. At least you'll know. But we have to get ourselves into the habit of doing it on a regular basis. We can't just do it when we feel like it or do it when we think of it, right? Because we've been trained our whole lives to think a different way, and now we're trying to think a new way. So some of that requires then a routine or a ritual, if you want to call it that, a certain time, a certain place to sit and set your intention and your desire for the day. Dr. Dennis Merritt Jones, one time, I told you this at the Asilomar conference, he asked the audience, he said, how many people have a special place in their home to wash their bodies? And everybody went, yeah, sure, everybody's got a shower and a tub. He says, how many have a special place in their homes to wash their minds? Very subtle point. We give great attention to the physical. We give great attention to the material. We give great attention to the old familiar ways. But now we want to do something different, and we have to create in our own lives, we have to create the space, where we will do our practice. And then, of course, the next thing after the discipline comes the practice. Right? You actually have to have a technique that you're going to practice. If you're going to learn how to play an instrument, you can't just set a time for practice and then just not practice. Right? You have to take up the instrument. You may have to play your scales or all the different things depending on the instrument that you take. But you actually have to do it. You have to do it. See, you have to get into it. You have to do it. And in our case, what are we talking about for practice? What is it that we're talking about? We're talking about reading inspirational works. Read the poetry of the great mystics. Try to feel the love that they are trying to convey to us through words that are on their own incapable of describing the ineffable. But they do their best. And if we try to open our heart to that experience, I think we can to some degree capture the spirit of what it is that they're trying to communicate to us. Right? And listening with our heart is very important. We're so used to listening with our head. We're so used to listening to that monkey mind in our head, which in the analysis really doesn't know much. Really doesn't know much of anything. But if we listen with our hearts, we open ourselves up to the omniscience of the divine. There is a knower that knows. That knower is omnipresence, which means its presence is here as me. It is expressing its life as me, through me. It wants for me what it wants for itself, which is joy. Does everything it does for joy. All of God is for me. None of God is against me. There's thousands and thousands of different ways that it has been said. And it can and will reveal to us that which we need to know, if we will invite it to do so. If we will accept its invitation to us to receive the gifts, And then the other important part of practice. Well, let me put out a couple more things in practice. So we read inspirational works. We read the mystical poetry. We open our hearts to receive, and that's one thing that we do. We have the practice of spiritual mind treatment, which is really inviting ourselves to truly understand the presence and the activity of God in our lives, in every aspect of our lives. Divine harmony expresses itself in our affairs, our customers, our business, the logistics of getting from here to there. All of the things, the seemingly normal things, can become mystical things as we recognize that they are unfolding a higher truth. The health of our physical bodies is an expression of divine harmony and divine perfection in every cell, every organ, every tissue of the body. What created these cells but divine intelligence and divine love? It knows how to do so perfectly. So we take time to recognize the presence and the activity of God in the seemingly mundane affairs of our life. And part of that practice, part of that spiritual practice of treatment is thanksgiving, is celebration, right? Fourth step. But we celebrate it not because of what it's going to do, what is going to happen. We celebrate it because it already is. It already is. And that's an important point. We are not trying to coerce or manipulate or convince the divine to do something it hasn't already done. What we are doing is we are instructing our subconscious mind to let go of all of the seeming obstacles. And I say seeming because of the inevitableness of God. So we have a very practical tool in our toolbox in the form of treatment, which gets us to think about those practical things that we have to do today, and then invite us to deliberately recognize the activity and the presence of God in this day, in the customers who come into my business, in the people I meet in the stores and interact with as they check me out. In each and every person I meet today, right, is the love of God, is the presence of God. Each one is a center of God activity. If I will take the time to come to the party and join the celebration, I can see that. I can feel that. I can experience that. We have our practice of meditation, which helps us to become less entangled at the beginning, perhaps disentangled later on with the chatter of the monkey mind. The goodness is already here. The love is already here. The greatness is already here. The presence of God is already here, but we don't see it because our minds are going 1,000 miles an hour in every direction. You know, it's like the blades of the fan. You can't stick your finger through there with, it feels solid. You can't get through the chatter of the monkey mind as it is going back and forth 1,000,000 miles an hour, and at some point you just have to tell it, hush, hush. Be still and know. Be still and know. And what these practices tend to do for us, the benefit to us, to our spiritual growth, to the opening of our spiritual center, to experiencing more of the presence and the activity and the love of God, and realizing that that is what we are. No matter what we used to believe about ourselves, that is what we are. Is that as we start to come into that actual experience, as the monkey mind chatter goes down, as the poetry of the mystics opens our hearts, as our practice of treatment brings us deeper into the realization that the activity of God is all that there is. See, as all of these things start to build up, we begin to have a deeper realization of the presence of the divine. We feel that love. See, love is the experience of unity. It is the experience of oneness. And when we feel one with another, we are feeling one with God. That's why I said last week, love is about the surest path. Love is about the straightest path. Not the easiest, but the surest and the straightest. So when we feel love, when we can open our hearts and feel unconditional love, while we are doing our practice, while we are going about our day, while we are hugging our spouse and our children goodbye as we go off to work, if we can open ourselves up to let that love touch us, You see, that experience of love is what changes us. That is truly what changes us. Emmett Fox says the only thing that changes consciousness is prayer, and his form of prayer was treatment. And treatment was bringing ourselves into, deliberately, a process to bring ourselves into a conscious awareness of the presence and the activity of God. But it is the experience of the presence and the activity of God that changes us, that takes these old values, these old ideas that we have learned, that tells us that life needs to be a struggle and you need to eat your bread by the sweat of your brow and all of those things, and it says, no, the yoke is sweet, the burden is light. Love is all that there is. So we come to recognize then that opening our spiritual center is about a deeper experience of the activity, of the love, and of the presence of the divine. It's not about getting more stuff or making life easier. And Goldsmith says this is trying to bring God down to our level. You know? Oh, we've discovered this thing called God. Now how can we make it work for us to make our lives, our human lives, better? And what really happens is, instead of, we can't do that. Right? So I love the example Joel Goldsmith gives us. He says if you walk into the lobby of a big office building in a big city, and your appointment is on the 28th floor, you press the button for the elevator and you get on the elevator. What happens is the elevator rises up. See? It's not like the elevator stays stationary and the building descends around the around the elevator. The elevator rises up. And what we want to do, sometimes we start out and we think, well, somehow I'm going to bring God down, get God to help me do my daily task. And what we finally realize is no. What I really want to do is allow my consciousness to ascend. And then what happens is, then all of those ordinary things seem to take care of themselves. They work out in mysterious ways. They get easier for us because we are not the ones doing the work. We meet the right people at the right time. We do the right things at the right time. It's not like we're not busy. It's not like we're not engaged in any activity. But the sense of, I am the one who has to make this happen. It has to be a struggle, and I'm going to do it by my willpower and by the sweat of my brow. All that's gone. See, all that's gone. And what we then have is the love of God is working through me to do what it must do. I invite you to consider this, that all of the things that we want in life, all of those things, they require, to some extent, the cooperation and the interaction of other people. Right? In other words, our good comes to us through other people. Our good only comes to us from God, but our good comes to us through other people. And we, in turn, are the instruments of God's good to other people, to them. So rather than thinking about what we want to get, we start to think about what life wants to give through us and as us. See, in this place of celebration, we are sharing the good that we find. Not by running out and trying to convince people that they need to go to a different church and those sorts of things, but through our ordinary activities, through just being love, through doing our job to the best of our ability, to being kind to one another, to loving one another, to sharing with the good works that we see. We recognize then that that which has created the universe out of itself knows how to do everything that ought to be done, if we will just come to the celebration, if we will just come to the party. Augustine said, I ask nothing of thee, not even thy love. I only want thee. The celebration that we wish to join is the experience of that love, of the presence, of the activity of the divine, the goodness, the kindness, the recognition of the presence and the activity of God in all things, and that is gratitude. So I invite you this day, I invite you this week, consciously take time, create a sacred place in your home, a corner somewhere that'll be your little sanctuary. Light a candle, light some incense if that helps create the mood. Take time to be at home with the beloved. Take time to set your intention. I ask nothing of thee, not even thy love. I only want thee. This day show me the way. This day lead me along my path. This day use me for your good. And then life is a party. And so it is.